so glad to be here with you today, and we get to talk about self-leadership. I want to talk to you a little bit about learning how to lead and manage the most challenging, influential person you'll ever deal with in your life, and that would be yourself. The one person who has more power to either help you get where you want to go or keep you from getting where you want to go, and that's yourself. So we're going to have a little fun, I hope, but we're going to talk a little bit about how to lead and manage yourself. To get us going, I want you to think about a strange little prop, and that's the story of the three little pigs. I hope everybody remembers it because I don't want to really read it, but I just want you to think about it a little bit. If you remember, there were three little pigs. One of them was a lazy pig, and he built a house out of straw. One of them was a playful pig, and he built a house out of sticks because he wanted to get back to play. And then one of them they call a smart pig, and he built his house slower, more carefully, out of brick so that it would withstand. And of course, the wolf came to all three houses in succession, knocked on the door, hey, little pig, let me come in, all that good stuff. And the short of it is the lazy pig's house got blown down, the playful pig's house got blown down, and they both ran to the other pig's house, and that's where they were protected and sustained for a longer period of time. Now, what I want you to think about is, what might we draw out of that story? And I've just found it's a really cool story to think through some thoughts about life, leadership, and all that entails. So let me just give you a few observations I would make from that story. Number one, what you build will be tested. Sooner or later, the quality of what you build in your walk with God, in your marriage, in your ministry, in your children, sooner or later, what you build will be tested. What if the wolf is time? And time and all the events that are contained within it over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, time will test what you build. So the wolf tested each of their houses. 2 of the 3 didn't make it. What you build will be tested. A second thought I have is this: how you build is determined more by what's on the inside of you than what's on the outside. What do I mean by that? Well, we got a lazy pig, a playful pig, and a smart pig. All I really mean is their internal attitudes, commitments, health, if you will, determine what they built and how they built it. So again, what's on the inside has more impact in what you build than what's on the outside. Another way to say that thought is this: the real challenges or barriers to growth, longevity, and success are not outside or around you, they're inside and behind you. And what I mean by behind you is, from earlier stages of life, things that you probably need to deal with that maybe haven't, and quite honestly, a lot of people just never slow down long enough to deal with that. So as we think about self-leadership, an important thought to me is finishing well. Think with me for a minute. What would be your number if we talked about what percentage of people finish well? Would it be 90%, 80%, 70%? What number would you put? When I've done this with a live audience, to be honest with you, it's very, very unusual for that number to get above 10%. Every once in a while, one person might say 25 or whatever, but almost always I get numbers like 1%, 2%, 7%. Almost never is the accumulated average higher than 10% finish well. Now, my thought to you is, if you talk about self-leadership, I don't mean how to manage yourself from now till next weekend. I mean how to manage yourself for the rest of your life so that you live well and finish strong, and in every area of your life, not just leadership or ministry. So let me talk to you a little bit about that. The best scripture I could give you for that is Mark chapter 4. Mark 4 talks about the parable of the sower. Jesus said that the sower sows the seed, and it fell on 4 soils or grounds: by the road, rocky soil, among the thorns, and then good soil. The point right now, there's lots of cool stuff to talk about there, but the point right now is how many ended well And obviously, you don't have to be a mathematician. 1 out of 4 ended well, meaning 3 out of 4 started reasonably well, but they did not end well. And I would have to say to you, after the years of ministry that my wonderful wife and I have put in together, that we would probably say that's the number that we've seen, that about 1 in 4 really end up living a multi-decade journey in God that they're pleased with. So my idea, my emphasis of self-leadership is, how can you and I manage ourselves, live our lives, lead ourselves in such a way that we end up living a life that we're proud of and pleased with. So let me give you a few thoughts that kind of flow out of the 3 little pigs. They flow out of the parable of the sower. And again, just a couple things to think about as we go forward this morning. Number 1, think decades. Don't think months, don't think years, think decades. What do I mean by that? When you think about your walk with God, when you think about your marriage, when you think about your family, when you think about your friendships, when you think about your ministry, think decades. How do I need to arrange myself so that decades from now, I'm still a force for God? I'm still making an impact and influencing people everywhere I go. Another thought I'd want you to think about as we talk about self-leadership is what I call the insanity test. You know, the cute definition, insanity is doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results. Well, the way I play with that is when you look at your life and the way you're leading yourself, ask yourself this question: can I get there the way I'm going? And what I mean by there is, most of us, especially those that are in some kind of a leadership role, have a there that they envision themselves arriving at. And I think that's great. You should have a there in your walk with God. I want to have this kind of a walk with God. You should have a there for your marriage. I want to have this kind of a marriage. You should have a there for your children. You should have a there, a vision that you're moving toward in your ministry life, your friendships, and all that kind of thing. But here's the question: when you picture that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years down the road, the there that you want to arrive at, can you get there the way you're going? In other words, another way to ask that question is, if I keep doing what I'm doing right now the way I'm doing it, will I be the man, woman I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Is what I'm doing going to take me where I want to go? Another question I like to use to just make us think a little bit is what I call the longevity test. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is, can I do what I'm doing the way I'm doing it for decades? In other words, is my current lifestyle sustainable? Is it nourishing my soul? Is it nourishing my journey in God? Is it nourishing my marriage? Is it nourishing to my children and family? Is the way I'm doing life now sustainable for decades? Now, here's my question. It's really quite simple. If the way you're doing life is not sustainable for decades, then why are you doing life that way? If the way you're doing life is not nourishing to your personal journey in God, to your marriage, to your kids, to your friends, to your ministry, then there's probably something wrong with the way you're doing life. And don't say to yourself, well, I'll change it when, or I'm in a season of. Have the courage to examine the way you're doing your life so that it is sustainable, because the sustainability test, the longevity test, is a great way to really ask the other question, and that is, am I doing life in a way that reflects where I want to arrive and who I want to be? So my whole thing is this: the inner reality creates, shapes, and defines the outer reality. Dude, what are you talking about? I am a pastor, but I'm also a marriage and family counselor. What does that mean? I've spent lots of time thinking about, praying about, reading, studying, and experimenting with people on how to bring us into healthier ways of doing life and journeying with the wonderful people God puts around us. And in the process of that, I've come to realize, as I've watched people, that your inner reality, the inside, creates, shapes, and defines the outside. Because of that, I'm going to talk to you about 3 key thoughts. I call them the fountain of youth. And what I mean by that is, if you want to keep an edge, if you want to live a life of vigor and vitality, intimacy and impact, passion and purpose, there's just certain things you need to be mindful of and committed to. But here's the problem. Most leader guys think outside before they think inside. And they go to seminars and conferences on how to do stuff better. And what I'm going to talk to you about is leading yourself, and leading yourself into places of health and wholeness that will then make the outer things you need to do much more doable and definitely much more sustainable, and, in my opinion, make the life you're living much more contagious and attractive. Other people will want what you have. So we're going to talk a little bit about what I call the fountain of youth. And of course, Joshua's a great example. Joshua and Caleb, they went into the spies into the land. 45 years later is when they went in the land. And Joshua says, or Caleb says to Joshua, God has kept me alive these 45 years. So we're talking about an 85-year-old guy who was still passionate. And I just want to get you to think a little bit about some of the things I've observed over my journey in my own life, my wonderful marriage, and then working with a congregation as a pastor with lots of people in a counseling setting, and then for the last 10 to 15 years in kind of a consulting coaching role with leaders at various sizes of ministry. So I just want to throw some thoughts at you that will help you in this whole area of self-leadership. 3 thoughts, 3 key points under the fountain of youth. Number 1, this is 1 thought, not 3. It's going to sound like 3. Know yourself, like yourself, be yourself. Dude, what are you talking about? Know yourself, like yourself, be yourself. What does that mean? Have an accurate assessment of yourself. What you're good at, what you're not good at, what energizes you, what doesn't energize you, what tires you out, what doesn't. Here's the problem. Comparison is the root of all inferiority. Comparison is the root of all inferiority. What does that mean? We waste a lot of our soul's energy looking at other people and what they're good at, comparing ourselves to them, and then either trying to be what they are and killing ourselves, or just feeling miserable because we're not that. And I spent a large portion of my life not liking how God made me, or at least how I perceived God had made me. The problem was I was around type A, motivated, organized, aggressive, somewhat disciplined people that were getting cool stuff done. And I just wasn't very good at that. I just wasn't good at I never was good at building a church. And I would walk into pastors who had larger churches and look at their buildings and look at the congregations and the programs and the cool systems they would develop. And I would just be like, Lord, I am such a loser. And I just didn't like myself. And I went through a period, a long period where I lived being tortured by that. And, but I was always good at the time I'd spend in a room alone with an individual, a couple, a team, teaching certain practical, really helpful stuff. And I realized something about myself. I don't wake up in the morning excited about building a church. I would wake up in the morning excited about building a person. And what happened one day is I was praying and probably kind of feeling pretty bad about myself and kind of, boo-hooing to God, why didn't you make me different? Why can't I do that better? Why aren't I more disciplined? And it's like, if you can kind of picture what you're having for lunch, well, that screen where you see your lunch, on that screen of my mind, I saw myself looking at my watch, tapping my foot like a person who's in a hurry. And there was like a person in front of me pouring out their problems, hurting, crying, telling me all the hurtful details of their life. And in this picture I saw, I was looking at my watch, patting my foot, saying, okay, I got that. Okay, I heard that. All right, hurry up, hurry up. And I realized that's not what I'm like. And all of a sudden it hit me. Wait a minute, God. Did you make me this way? And then it hit me. Oh my goodness. Do you like me this way? You like the way you made me? And there was a shift that took place in my life. And I realized God made me to be a laid-back, relaxed person, not terribly agenda-driven. I'm late about everywhere I go. Why? So that I'd be able to be a safe place for hurting people to process life stuff, which now includes leaders just like yourselves. So now I drive onto the property of a church of 9,000, dear friend of mine in Atlanta. I walk in his buildings and they blow my mind. And here's what I say to myself. I can't do this. But I go down to a little office that I use downstairs and I meet with him and his wife and all of his key staff. And in that room, alone with people for an hour at a time, God uses me to rock their world. And they have told me, including the leader, that I've affected the culture of that church just by what happens in that little room. Now, know yourself, like yourself, be yourself. If you live your life comparing yourself to other people, you're going to be miserable. I promise you, you're going to be miserable. Genesis 3:10 says this, I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Think about that for a minute. I was afraid, fear, because I was naked, shame, the shame of being exposed, so I hid. Just superficial, artificial, the inability to be authentically ourselves. What God wants to do is deliver you from fear, deliver you from shame, and bring you into the ability to authentically, if you will allow me, restfully be yourself. And here's the crazy thing. Do you realize how much energy you expend trying to be someone you're not? Do you realize how much energy you save if you could joyfully, consistently, you know what? I think I'll just be myself. Am I good at everything I'd like to be good at? No. But I am good at some stuff. I really believe this. It's not just a cool little slogan to me. I believe everybody's a 10 at something. Everybody's a 10 at something. But you know what? You're probably pretty close to a 0 at something too. And it would be in your best interest to figure out, what are you a 10 at, 7 at, 8 at, 6 at, and what are you a 2 or a 3 at? And you know what? You may, because of your job placement, your ministry placement, you may need to get your 2s or 3s up to a 4, but I doubt God's going to ever want you to get your 2s or 3s up to an 8. But figure out where you land up in that higher range. All right, second point. First one, know yourself, like yourself, be yourself. Second one is never stop growing. Never stop growing. I'll be honest with you, one of my biggest kind of aggravation issues with people is that they stop challenging themselves. They stop engaging people, books, ideas, ways of doing things that are outside of the ones they're comfortable with. Here's the crazy reality. You grow, a muscle grows when you strain it beyond its current ability, if you will. Same thing with you. When you go beyond your current ability, it hurts. It's uncomfortable, but that's where the growing edge is. They've done studies of the brain, and the brain has different chemicals, of course, that make you feel good, bad, and all the in between. Well, they found that people who do not engage new thoughts, new ideas, new people, new challenges, when they do not do that, their brain is dominated by a family of chemicals that are on the depressive end of the scale. However, if you engage new thoughts, new ideas, new challenges, things that make you slightly uncomfortable, what happens is a different set of chemicals dominates your brain that are the up chemicals that make you more alert, alive, vigorous, and engaged. And you literally can keep yourself more vitally alive by stretching yourself in engaging people, ideas, and experiences. It's very important that you figure out how rhythmically, systematically, and intentionally over decades, figure out how to continue to challenge yourself. And quite honestly, life will do that for you if you let it, if you listen to it, if you engage it in ways that are helpful. I love this statement, coasting kills. Coasting kills. Book I read years ago said one guy went into a friend's office and he saw this plaque or something on his desk, and it was a tombstone. And it was like John Doe died at 35, buried at 80. And the message of it was that this person had ceased to truly live way before we threw dirt on them. And I just don't want to be that way. I want to live till my last breath. All right, know yourself, like yourself, be yourself. Never stop growing. I told you 3 things in this, what I call the fountain of youth. The third one is learn to live your life from the inside out. What do you mean by that? Well, another way to say it is learn to fill your bucket from the inside out. Learn to live your life from the inside out. Learn to fill your bucket from the inside out. I think of life in concentric circles, meaning a center circle, another circle, another circle, another circle. The center circle is me and God. The next circle is me and my wonderful wife of 36 years, by the way. The next circle, and my children temporarily, meaning they've all grown and basically left the home now, most of the time off the payroll. The next circle is the shared adventure or calling that my wife and I walk in. And then the next circle is all the other stuff that life brings. But my point is this, learn to live life from the inside out. That center circle is where you should start. When? Every single day. Learn to live your life inside out. Learn to fill your bucket inside out. What do you mean by that? Learn to fill your bucket by God, in God, with God. Mac Lake, I'm sure everybody knows Mac. Mac and I were at Seacoast doing something together and finished walking out to the car. And I thought we were just walking to the car, day's over, no big deal. And little did I know that God was creating a moment for Mac and I. And what happened is we started to talk, and Mac was talking about some issues in his life. He's given me permission to tell this story, by the way. And we rolled around to some issues that I thought would be helpful to him. And what I said to him was, Mac, how do you start your day? And Mac told me how he commits himself to the Lord. And I don't remember the details, so forgive me, Mac, if I get them wrong, but he worships a little bit and this, that, and the other. And I said, Mac's the wrong way to do it. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, if you really want to fulfill the purpose of God, totally in, one day at a time, you need to understand what the purpose is. So I said, to do that, you got to answer a question. Why did God create you? So I asked him, why did God create you? And Mac's response was like it would be if I polled a room of 15 or 20 people, to worship him, to serve him, to evangelize, whatever. And I said, none of those are correct. Why did God create you? The bottom line is we evolved to this. Why did God create you? Not for you to love him. 1 John 4:19 says we love him because he first loved us. God created you so that he could love you. Then you're able to love him. Here's the deal, folks. You can't give something to God you haven't received from God, because you can't give something you don't have. So learn to live from the inside out. Learn to fill your bucket from the inside out. What do you mean by that? The first circle is you and God. Here's my goal. My goal is to leave that circle already full of everything I need. Love, approval, affection, everything I need. If you can learn to look to God, run to God, rely on God for everything you need, it will make your relationship with every other person and thing on earth much, much better. Let me close with 3 thoughts. What I would call travel tips for this journey that you're on. Build and maintain a band of brothers. What does that mean? Build and maintain a group of 3 to 5 couples, friends, that you do life with regularly enough, consistently enough, authentically enough that you would be able to confront one another, support one another, and encourage one another in a time of trouble or even failure. Build and maintain a band of brothers. Number 2, find a fatherly tour guide. Not a travel agent, but a tour guide. Someone who's been where you're going and knows how to help you get there. And then the third and last thing I'd say is a travel tip is this: be a truth chaser. Don't run from truth, run toward truth. Thank you, guys.